Bienvenidos de nuevo a Oportunidades en Grecia, el podcast en el que tratamos de acercar las oportunidades en el marco de la internacionalización, de la exportación, la inversión y la captación de financiación que el país presenta para la empresa española. Welcome again to Oportunidades en Grecia, the podcast where we try to inform about opportunities regarding exports and investments in the country, Greece, to Spanish companies. Today, in this, our 7th episode, we'll talk about the development law, the just transition plans, and strategic investments in Greece. And who better talk about them than Aliki Papadopoulou, director of the Secretaries General of Private Investments and PPPs Office. A legal expert, Aliki has worked before as member of KPMG's International Legal and Tax Network and several well-known local law firms. Welcome, Aliki, and thank you for spending this time with us. Before getting into the Q&A, into the questions, I would like to very briefly mention and stress the fact that Greece has been doing great when it comes to foreign direct investments. 2021 was a record year, more than 5.5 billion euros of FDI, and the level went up another notch in 2022, 6.1 billion euros of FDI investments received by the country. So let's just jump into the questions with Aliki. Aliki, broadly speaking, and before we get into detail, with the legislation passed to attract investments, what do you think are the main reasons for any foreign company to invest in Greece?
I want to thank you for having me here and giving the chance to talk about the investments and how this has evolved over the past 3 years. So, both ministers, Mr. Papathanassis and Mr. Georgiadis, as well as the Secretary General of Private Investments and PPPs, Mr. Kavallakis, have tried and continue to do so to accelerate all administrative procedures and provide attractive benefits for all type of investments made in Greece. Apart from the coherent legal framework, when it comes to Greece, the advantages are also related to the location, the weather and the low cost of living compared to many other countries of the EU. The low employment cost, along with high-level educated personnel, is another advantage, which is very hard-working according to global guides. The government has taken huge steps in the area of making the investment environment attractive by using all available tools provided by our framework and the European legislation. So, a very lucid example comes from the cooperation between our ministry and the Ministry of Finance, where we managed to combine the benefits granted by our development law with the benefits granted by the RRF. A few months ago, we communicated through a joint press release with Minister Skylakakis those possibilities to the public. Of course, there are many more to be done in terms of further enhancing the investment environment. However, I believe that huge steps have been made to that direction.
Quite interesting. I agree with most of the parameters that you mentioned that make very attractive Greece for investors. Now, getting down to the legislation, the new development law that was passed early last year, 2022. Why at that point? Why did the country need that new development law, Aliki?
That's a great question. This time we needed a new development law in order to boost the economy in a more structured way. That is why for the first time we included thematic sectorial, let's say, state aid schemes, so we could promote a sectorial distribution of the available funds. Apart from that, the negotiations for the state aid rates of the new regional state aid map for the period 2021 to 2027 resulted in an increase of the rates for the majority of the regions of the country. This is something alongside the above-mentioned opportunities that a new investor might see in Greece. And that could be the breaking point to invest here compared to another EU member state. In addition to the above, the sectorial approach and the fact that we needed a new law for private investments derived from the Pisaridis report as well, which constitutes the, let's say, the guiding document of principles for the governmental policies and the ministerial actions for the period running already. This period, beginning from 2020, found Greece with the opportunity to fruitfully take advantage of the 72 billion euros deriving from the EU Recovery Fund, which was agreed among the member states as a way to support the EU countries' fight against the negative effects of the pandemic. The backbone of the new development law is mainly the inclusion of digital transformation and green transition actions, also related to important European value chains. Another pillar upon which we built our policies was the new NSRF 2021 to 2027, which includes, among other things, independent programs for digital transformation with improved resources, the just transition with regard to the lignite areas, the environment, climate change, and energy program, as well as a new program for competitiveness with measures to strengthen the economy. Given the above, we ended up in forming the basic axis for our sectorial schemes in order to give targeted benefits in specific business sectors that are linked to those principles and policies. The axes were the green transition, the energy transformation, the digital transformation, the need to boost employment and social cohesion, of course, the promotion of research and innovation, the enhancement of extroversion, the improvement of the quality of the services in the tourism sector, along with further enhancing the international image, and last but not least, the growth and modernization of the agri-food sector.
Well, quite a lot of information. Could you then sort of navigate us through the way the new development law integrates with the so-called axis of the government policy, the new regional state aid map, and as you mentioned, the thematic state aid schemes? Which, could you, in a nutshell, tell us a little bit which incentives does it bring to the table for foreign investors?
Let's start from the question that comes last, because the incentives are very important to boost the investment environment. So, the incentives granted include cash grants, tax exemptions, leasing subsidies, and subsidies for new employment. It's really important to note that the incentives vary depending on the size of the company, which means that medium and large-sized enterprises may benefit mostly from the tax exemptions, leasing subsidies and subsidies for new employment, up to an amount of 5 million euros, where the very small and small enterprises may benefit from cash grants up to an amount of 3 million euros. The sectorial approach of the schemes allows for enterprises to file their application in the specific sector of business. For example, touristic enterprises may file their project in a dedicated state aid scheme for touristic investments, while the previous law had an approach based on the size of the enterprises. For example, projects in the area of tourism and projects in the area of manufacturing, let's say, were both eligible for the same state aid scheme, which was, we could say, somewhat unfair. So that's why we formed 13 thematic state aid schemes that integrate the priorities set by the Pisaridis report, the NSRF, and the need for a fair competition between the enterprises. So, based on the axes we mentioned before. The available schemes are the digital and technological business transformation, the green transition, new business, just development transition, research and applied innovation, the agri-food sector, manufacturing, supply chain, business extroversion, tourism investments. We also have a special provision for a state aid scheme in the alternative forms of tourism. Major investments, European value chains, and the Entrepreneurship 360. We need to mention that within July, the first state aid scheme, Manufacturing Supply Chain, was released with a total budget of 150 million euros for grants and tax exemption. This budget will be allocated to the regions of the country, and the state aid rates amount from 15% to 70%, with an additional 10% for the regions and municipalities that have been included in the territorial just transition plans. Special care has been taken for the regions that are close to the borders, where we want to strengthen the incentives in order to attract investments that would help also with the creation of new jobs. Following that first call, we already released also the agri-food primary production scheme, the touristic state aid scheme, as well as the Entrepreneurship 360. Next week, we are preparing to release the Just Transition scheme for projects to be implemented in Western Macedonia and Megalopoli, with a budget of 380 million euros. From the information we already got, the investors' interest is huge, and the maturity of the projects is significantly higher than of those of the past. So we have many more to come. The first 4 schemes have been already released, and we are on the route for the 5th.
Well, it seems that there is a very, very interesting approach to sort of like making more appealing the country to foreign investors. And I thank you very much for explaining how these different pieces of regulation get together so that potential investors from Spain can make the best of them. There seems to be also a big change for the better with the procedure. What's new now with the new development law with regards to the so-called new integrated system work?
So the effective implementation of the new framework is being supported already by an integrated information system. We had to create a new informational system because we identified significant delays and technical problems in the previous one. So our main goal was and continues to be to accelerate the whole administrative procedure, and we couldn't have done it without a new system that will fully support all of the innovations, both in terms of incentives and schemes, but also in the steps required for a business plan to get the approval decision. So the new system supports the whole life cycle of the business plan. And in the same time, it also reduces red tape, which is a huge problem that we had to surpass. The investors or their advisors may file the business plan through the system, and all the steps forward are being handled electronically. All information is automated. The system interoperates with systems of other competent authorities, such as the General Secretariat of Information Systems, the Independent Authority for Public Revenues, and many more. There is no paperwork. There is no interaction with the administration for reasons that are related also to the to the need for transparency and integrity. What's also new are the deadlines we have introduced in the law, giving a clear message to all competent authorities and bodies that they need to move fast and complete all necessary actions in a timely manner. So, all of the above, we hope that will boost the confidence of investors, of foreign investors as well, and further attract investments in the country.
So it sounds like a higher coordination of all of the authorities that have something to say within the process of receiving investors from abroad. I would like now to have, if possible, a couple of words about the just transition plans that you mentioned at some point. I think you just said that something will be announced about the Megalopoli.
Yeah, in the coming days, the scheme for the just transition will be released.
If you could tell us a little bit of the just transition plans for, as you said, the delignification of certain areas. You just mentioned Megalopoli. How do those interact with the new development law?
So we have launched a completely new legal framework on just transition, which serves the goal of decarbonization related to the environmental protection, the promotion, of course, of green and competitive electricity generating methods, and what's also very important is the diversification of the production model of the lignite areas. So the new law for just transition is in full alignment with the National Energy and Climate Plan and the EU Green Deal for a fair development transition to a climate neutral and circular economy. It aims to set a strong governance ecosystem which will reassure the stakeholders' coordination and also the effective interaction of the institutional bodies established. Those bodies will manage to find the relevant financial resources and facilitate the development and implementation of investments related to just transition. The new legal framework came as a result of the need to abide by the objectives set out in both the National Energy and Climate Plan and the long-term strategy for 2050 and the Greek government's commitment. The commitment to withdraw almost all lignite plants by 2028, to phase out oil and diesel power plants on the islands, accelerating their electricity interconnection with the continental system. What's also a top priority had to do with the need to safeguard and harness the know-how of the human potential of the affected areas. And that is why the process of just development and energy transition in Greece is ongoing. The top goals related to the plan are to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, to increase penetration of the renewables in gross final energy consumption, to improve energy efficiency for higher energy savings, and reduce the share of lignite in power generation. The plans were approved last summer by the European Commission, where the areas of Western Macedonia, Crete, the islands of South and North Aegean, Megalopolis, Ichalia, Hortynia, and Tripolis were included, and all of these areas are granted with an additional 10% of the respective stated rate provided in the map, and can amount up to 70 to 80% of the investment budget, which is a huge advantage if someone is interested to invest in those areas.
Let's go now to the third piece of regulation, so that we can see the whole map of new changes in the country, which is that has to do with legal framework for strategic investors, a law from 2021. So far we've talked about the new development law, which integrates the so-called axis of the government policy, the new regional state aid map, and the thematic state aid schemes. Then we talk about just transitional plans, which are regional plans, some regions of Greece. Now we're going to talk about strategic investors. What is considered, first of all, what is a strategic investor within the law?
So, strategic investments are those investments that, due to their strategic importance, let's say to the national and local or local economy, can increase employment, encourage productive reconstruction, and also highlight the natural and cultural environment of Greece, based on principles of social fairness, inclusivity, and balanced and sustainable development. And also, whose main characteristics are the attraction of investment capital, export activity, innovation, competitiveness, universal planning, conservation of natural resources as part of the circular economy, and high added value, especially in areas of economic activity involving internationally tradable products and services. Those strategic investments have a different framework, and in order, I don't know if that would be interesting for the audience, in order to qualify as a strategic investment, there are some main criteria that are being examined, such as the budget and the size of the investment, the number of the new employees, the competitiveness, the high added value. Based on that, we have different categories for strategic investments. The budget must start from 20 million euros and create at least 40 new jobs. In total, there are 6 categories of strategic investments, and I don't think it would be very helpful now to give a very descriptive categorization of the categories. So I think we can move on.
Yeah, I think with the description of who would be categorized as or what would be categorized as a strategic investment is way more than enough. But with the category comes, I suppose, some incentive or a particular tax framework. That's it.
So in the strategic investments, the incentives granted depend on the category that the possible investor will fall into, meaning that not all categories may benefit from the same incentives. However, let's try to give a description of what is granted, and whoever needs further information can navigate through our new website of the General Secretariat of Private Investments and PPPs, and get all the information that he or she might need in that area. So the incentives are the special incentives. The General Directorate of Strategic Investments may draft a specific special plan for the development of strategic investments, based primarily on a single area for that. The tax incentives include the stabilization of the income tax rate at the project approval date for 12 years after completion, up to the 8 limits of the GBER, the regulation of the European Commission. Also, tax exemptions and accelerated tax depreciation of fixed assets by 100%, the so-called super deduction for the depreciation of mechanical equipment by an extra 30%. We also have the fast-track licensing, which is major incentives when it comes to the Greek administration, unfortunately. So all required licenses and approvals for the implementation, installation, or operation of strategic investments are issued within 45 calendar days after the full documentation file for each required license is submitted before the General Directorate of Strategic Investments. It's also very important to note that we have benefits for operating expenditure, wage subsidies for disadvantaged workers and for workers with disabilities, aid for research and development projects, 20 million per investments for industrial research, 15 million per investment for experimental development, and 7.5 million per investment for feasibility studies. Now, for the emblematic investments, the incentives may take the form of a cash grant, leasing subsidy or wage subsidy for new employment. And it's also quite important to say that the funding for the emblematic investments will derive from the RRF funds, while those projects should have been completed until the end of December 2025. Those incentives and subsidies must comply, of course, to the GBER. And finally, when it comes to taxation, the general rules apply as well to the strategic investments, apart from those that have been granted the taxing incentives.
Well, quite interesting, and there again, a lot of information. I think I will advise the audience to listen to the podcast twice, so they can get all the info and all the detail, because this is the way to navigate it. You've talked about simplified legal framework. I think I understood. I heard, and the evaluation and licensing process. Anything you would like to add to your previous comments? And do you have some examples of actual strategic investments that have happened so far in the country?
Yeah. Through the acceleration of processes in both private and strategic investments, we wanted to create a consolidated text, which is very important for all the parties that want to invest in Greece. So this new law for strategic investments further codifies and improves the existing framework by removing provisions that have proved to be dysfunctional while introducing, amending, or new provisions. The aim is to improve, in general, the investment climate for the implementation of the investments in order to simplify and accelerate the processes of their evaluation and realization, and to enhance the legal certainty, which is very, very important, and the development of a new single regulatory framework. So, if we want to give a few examples of strategic investments, in the last 3 years, from 2020 to this day, 34 new strategic investments have been approved by the Interministerial Committee of Strategic Investments, having a total budget of 8 billion approximately in numerous areas of business activities, such as the touristic sector, waste management, data centers, heavy industry, R&D. A very recent example is this January, the 27th, motor oil strategic investment for the construction and operation of the storage and regasification facilities for liquefied natural gas, the FSRU, was approved, having a total investment cost of 350 million euros. And on December, the lithium-ion battery manufacturer Sunlight Group's project, amounting up to 100 million, has also been approved, which will increase the production capacity of the energy storage systems in a privately owned plot in Xanthi. So the above underlines the confidence of large-scale investors to the Greek government and the efforts that have been made the last 3 years in terms of acceleration of all administrative procedures and the further simplification of the regulatory framework. And we are very optimistic that many more investors will choose Greece as their optimum destination.
Well, so far, record years in the last in 21 and 22. There is a term that I would like you to further explain to us within the law. You got the strategic investments, and then you got the emblematic investments of great significance. Which are those?
So, as already discussed before, the emblematic investments of great significance, they are a distinct category of strategic investments, and it is the milestone of the new reform. The category does not require a minimum sum of investment cost or a minimum number of annual employment, but it must be implemented by a renowned entity and shall promote the green economy, innovation, technology, as well as the economy of low energy and environmental footprint. Those investments are expected to enhance our economies and the competitiveness at an international level. The cash grants and other benefits in the form of subsidies will be funded by the RRF, as we said before, under the condition that they have to be completed by the end of December 2025. This initiative was part of the Greek RRP, the Recovery and Resilience Plan, and a major milestone met. An additional procedure is set for those investments, which involves a three-member committee that is already set and working, the member of which are experts of recognized prestige of various specialties, and they will be responsible for the granting of an opinion on the emblematic or not emblematic nature of the investment to be filed before that committee.
Well, we could not finish this conversation without speaking a little bit about PPPs, about public-private partnerships. I would like to know what's the current status regarding this, and how do the previous laws that we mentioned, development law, just transition plans, strategic investments, how do those affect the approach to build, operate, and maintain infrastructures of all sorts? What's the role of EBRD these days? We know there's a unit there helping out, I think, or cooperating with you. And a little bit, if you can, about the pipeline. What's next to be funded through this approach in the administration?
The PPPs are a completely distinct unit within the General Secretariat, and they're governed by different legal framework, and they have a different perspective. Since 2009, 15 projects of 1.4 billion euros that span several sectors, transport, education, waste management, have successfully reached the financial close in Greece, and those projects are currently operational. 46 projects of 6.5 billion development costs have been approved by the Interministerial Committee for PPPs in a variety of sectors, including roads, student accommodation, waste, transport, and energy efficiency projects. All these projects are either being or will be tendered in the near future by a number of procuring authorities. The laws governing the PPPs constitute a complete, unified and coherent legal framework for the implementation of the projects. However, the main legal framework is the law 3389/2005, and this law includes a very clear approval process and centralized control by the Interministerial Committee for PPPs. The award procedure are in line with the European directives. There are specified contractual terms, fast-track provisions for the grants of authorizations and permits. The provisions also include implementation of projects featuring both availability payments and users' fees, special for provisions for dispute resolution by arbitration, And when it comes to the role of EBRD, it is the intention of the Greek government to help provide efficient and high-quality project preparation for all projects. In this direction, we developed with EBRD support a new mechanism focused on the preparation of bankable PPP projects. This bespoke Greek PPP project preparation facility, with the support of the Greek government via the Ministry of Finance's funding, supports Greek procuring authorities in maturing PPP projects. The pipeline now, in addition to those 46 previously mentioned projects, the government is holding discussions with stakeholders on projects that will be submitted for approval in the near future in sectors that include waste, energy efficiency, irrigation, public accommodation, ICT, transport and health. We are currently developing a national strategy for PPPs, setting out the main objectives of PPPs in Greece and the strategic context for the implementation. Our goal, is to develop a strategic plan for the use of PPPs across sectors, with a view to identifying and developing a credible, forward-looking PPP project pipeline within a context of a proactive approach to targeting new projects.
Well, again, a lot of substantial information regarding PPPs and the unit and what EBRD, how EBRD is cooperating with the country, which is also I think, very important for companies that might eventually do PPP projects, which entail a certain investment. Very interesting to listen to you, Aliki, someone with a strong technical knowledge about all these issues that could help us navigate through the extensive and intensive regulation that has come new regarding investments. I do agree with you. There are tons of things that make the country very attractive for investors. You talked about costs, life, human resources. It's it's become more and more an investor-friendly country. And the way you talked about the evolution that made possible these new laws, the Oportunidades report, the leverage that could happen with the recovery fund, and how you explained to us the development law, the just transition plans, strategic investments and emblematic investments, as well as PPPs. I don't recall if you said 15 or 50, 5-0, those that have been already executed lately.
For the PPPs, 14.
14. And all those sectors in which there is a lot of potential. You talked about waste, you talked about water, you talked about digital, you talked about IT. Thank you very much for joining today, Aliki.
Thank you very much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk about how attractive the business environment in Greece is now, and how better it will be in the coming years.
Thank you. Y nosotros nos vemos de nuevo pronto en Oportunidades en Grecia. Aún queda mucho por conocer. Digitalización, infraestructuras de transporte y un largo etcétera. Hasta pronto.